Hey, everybody, welcome back. It is Great Mondays Radio. Well, a bit of an oddball episode for you, but I think it's special in its own unique way. Today, we're going to be talking with nonfiction book ghostwriter for business and leaders, Jamie Dykstra. She has a particular, what I'll call a zone of genius for helping her clients find authentic voice and genuine storytelling. And what I found compelling about what Jamie does is understanding this authentic voice as a way of understanding oneself and what our value is in the market, and more specifically applied to kind of what is our position, because in and of our, like, we are the only ones responsible for our careers and how we are positioned in the market. We are our own brands. And I thought that Jamie would probably have some insights for us to help us understand how to tap into what it is that we stand for and what our authentic voice is. Jamie Dykstra, welcome to Great Mondays Radio. Thanks for coming on.
Hey Josh, thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
So, what is an authentic voice? This is something that this is a term that you're using a lot, and I want to understand, just so we can have as a point of entry, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I think authenticity is a word that's thrown around a lot these days. So I'm
Yes,
glad we're
exactly.
starting. I'm glad we're
Exactly.
starting with that. I think it really means just, when I say authentic voice, it's being true to yourself and, how we show up one place is how we show up all places. But sometimes when we try to do that, we end up losing ourselves. So our authentic voice is really, showing up as kind of unfiltered, societally appropriate, unfiltered versions of ourselves, I guess I would say. And really tapping into, you know, what what people see, uh, what people see in us, and just kind of leaning into that rather than leaning into what we think we should be doing. It's finding our superpowers and utilizing that.
Internally directed as opposed to externally uh, influenced, let's say.
Yeah.
I is Can I add to your definition um, sort of durability of
Mm.
of of voice, right? So there's a lot of folks that I'll see out there and be like, I'm an expert in this now, and I'm an expert in this now. And it's okay, I think, to pick up and pivot. And, those things are all fine. But what I think when I think of authentic voice, I think of honesty that, that travels across time,
Hmm.
because we have so many like phases in our careers and lifestyle. It's like there's just so many things, and I wanted to see how that, like, to me, that's a characteristic of authenticity.
Oh, 100%. Because people are gonna figure you out anyways, right? If you say you're an expert in something and then they start talking to you, like they're gonna figure out very quickly like whether you're actually an expert or not. And so I think, I mean, I used to work in the corporate world and now I'm a ghostwriter, and I think all the time about the fact that people pay for the services, but part of what they're paying for is you as a person, like what you bring to the table to that experience. And if you're not showing up transparently, honestly, authentically, like that's not fair to really either side of the equation. And I find that most people actually value when you are transparent and honest and be like, hey, like I'm kind of new to this or I'm just getting into this, but like this is the experience I do have and this is how I compensate for that. Like I have a coach or I've taken this or I'm working through this. And
Hmm.
people are usually willing to work with that because we've all been beginners at some point, right? So, if you say you're an expert and you're off to a bad start then, and if
If
you
you're
really
not,
aren't.
yeah. So, what are the ways that you start your conversations? How can folks listening start to think about defining their own voice, their own story, their own, and through that their own position. What do they stand for? How do you get to that? Because that's these are some big questions.
Yeah. I like to start with intention setting. I think that's applicable throughout across the board, whether you're writing a book or looking to make a career pivot or getting into speaking or whatever the case may be. If you don't take a step back and create space to be intentional about what you're doing and what you want to lean into, then you're going to continue on this hamster wheel of whatever you're in, whether it's the corporate world or freelancing or,
Mm,
whatever, you get stuck on that hamster wheel. But when you take a step back and say, like, okay, like, what are the things that I love to do, love to talk about, like, want to make an impact with, and who are the people that I like to support and serve? And you answer some questions like that, then you can kind of take a step back and be like, okay, like, this is my mission. And in that, like, how can I show up as my most authentic self in that mission? Because when you are more pinpointed at that, it's easier to show up with your authentic voice and to share
hmm
your stories because they all tie together then.
So, the two anchor points here. What do I care about and who do I want to support? Am I getting that correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
All right. So that's who we're starting with. And I love that because uh it usually does someone is sort of self-consumed with kind of like what do I want to be, known for? But when it's again coming from a place that is honest, I think you're going to ask I think these questions that you're teeing up for us are about getting to the core of that honesty. What are some examples of like groups that we want to support when you're talking? This is kind of like what you might say in marketing, like your target market. Um, how uh, how specific, how narrow? What are some examples that you might give? Because I do think that uh being sharp is being powerful and being heard.
100%. When I talk to people, we get very specific. Like we're
I love
talking
that.
a single person here. Like, um, if I were writing a book with someone, like I'm like, pretend we're sitting on a couch and like, who do you see in front of you? And like explain that to me. And so we tee it up like some ways to think about this are like, who's a client that like was your ideal client or came with this huge transformation, or who's someone that you would love to help and like what are their characteristics, or who's someone, a friend that like if you could help them, like that's that person that you would
Mm-hmm.
help.
Mm-hmm.
And so obviously you're always targeting more than one person, but by getting those characteristics of like what makes them tick, what objections do they have? That's a huge thing that people overlook because that's often a big area that you can serve and being like, no, no, like you're not stuck. Like you can move forward because of this. It's getting really specific because that helps form your messaging for your story. Like your story is your story, but you can formulate it to target that audience in a way that it resonates with them. You're still being authentic, but you're making it's others focused. It's not about you. And so when you get specific, that's when it's going to resonate. I used to be a copywriter, and so the saying was like when you target everybody, you reach nobody. And so when you get specific, you're sure to hit that audience that really resonates, and then they're going to tell more people about it because it resonated, and they're going to tell
Mm-hmm.
people that are like them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So start with specificity, and that's what's gonna sort of echo out. I asked you for some examples, and I'm hearing, well, it's not about a demographic or a psychographic. It's about a very specific. person who represents, it's kind of like the I don't know, what do you call it? The hourglass, right? Where you gotta like zoom, you gotta get like get way narrow, and then you can kind of expand out. Um, is there a way to describe, just to kind of flesh out for us, like the specific person, like in your mind? If you know, I don't know. I want to kind of um, I want to understand what you try to get to.
Yeah, I think definitely you can talk demographic information. And I think that's the nice part about starting with a really specific person is it's kind of like when you have a project and you work backwards from a deadline, right? Like when
Mm-hmm.
you start with this very specific person, then you can work backwards from there. Like um, age group, female versus male, what do they do? Where do they spend their money? Things like that. Like, yeah, you
Mm-hmm.
can work backwards from that once you have your person. But when it comes to storytelling and your authentic voice, it's more nuanced than that as well. Like, what challenges are they facing? What sort of support do they need? Um, what have their past experiences been? What sort of transformation are they looking for? Things like that is how you're able to target your messaging, your thought leadership, and how you're able to find your people because you're ultimately solving a problem for them,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? It's not about you, it's about them. And when you get into that sort of nuance, that is when the rubber really meets the road.
So whether we're talking book or career or, you know, role, your next role inside of a company, this target does feel very important. And um, how might we expand this out from that perspective of, you know, where I'm writing a book targeted to somebody? It's like if I'm not writing a book, like I'm on LinkedIn doing this. I'm like, what are some other ways that we can take this construct and apply it, or at least test it out, maybe even?
Yeah. Yeah, I think definitely it's applicable to anywhere that you're communicating with others, I would say. So it comes back to
Mm-hmm.
that intention setting, right? So if you're looking to change roles or even, like you said, move roles within your company, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that makes it even easier, right? You know the players there, you know some of the different dynamics. And so you can really target in that case that persona that you're reaching out towards and then cater to that. Like if you're in if you're in the tech industry, the tone and vibe is usually very different than, you know, it's more fun, it's more fast paced than certain other industries that might move a little slower and be
Mm-hmm.
more formal. And so like things like that matter. And if you're looking to change roles, then or change companies, I should say, you probably have an idea of mind of like, I really loved these things about this past job, and I really didn't love these things about it. And so, from that perspective, like you can think of a company as that persona, right? Like, this is the type of I want to go big, medium, or small. I want to go public or private. I want to do this or that. And so, you can kind of go through that same process of
Mm-hmm.
personifying, but doing it the company way. And then do your research and figure it out. And so when you're posting on LinkedIn, tailor your posts to the type of companies that are going to be interested
Mm-hmm.
in that. And it's not just the content, because if it was just the content, then you know you can crank out content, no, all day
Yeah.
long with ChatGPT or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. That's not a
But
differentiator anymore.
it's your voice and how you show up with that. And if you're not showing up authentically in LinkedIn or resumes or emails or whatever, just like not being an expert, like people are going to figure that out really quickly too. And
Mm-hmm.
so your people will find you if you're intentional about your message and your voice, and then that's going to lead you to a better fit down the road.
All right, so let's go to the other anchor point, the kind of what do you care about? Um, so, uh, and we can kind of push around the edges here, but let's use the same thing. Like, how do I've got a lot of different things that I want to think about, right? Or it's like, oh, I have this particular experience, or I have this insight, or right, like what like how do I decipher like I'm thinking about like it's like the difference between picking things apart and like wrapping it all up in a big container and like how do you start to like un di- I don't know, interrogate that like what I care about enough to be able to put some edges around it.
Yeah. I think, honestly, it's a process of trying. That's something that I've learned as an entrepreneur is that you might think that you really like something, but until you do it,
Mm,
you don't really know. And so I think in the process of figuring out that impact that you want to make, you're kind of looking backwards, similar to what I was talking about before. Like, I really liked this about, this role that I had. I didn't like this. I liked how this made me feel.
mm,
Um, and then pairing that with, areas of genius that you've recognized in yourself. My story, this is a question that I love because my story has been a winding road. My degree is in accounting. I worked in corporate finance for a while. I got my master's in finance, but I worked on projects a lot, and I found that I loved project management and operations and all of that. So I moved into operations and I became certified as a project manager, and that was great. But then that wasn't quite like that didn't feel right anymore either. And so um, I moved out of the corporate world and I was like, I don't know what I want to do. And a friend of mine was like, you're really good at writing. Like maybe you should start a blog. So I started a blog, which turned into copywriting, which has now turned into ghostwriting. And I've used every single experience along the way. Like I work on business books for a reason because I have corporate experience where I can understand the challenges that people are going through, the language that they're using, things like that. The project management comes into play because it's a big thing. And so I think it's picking the pieces that you really have enjoyed along the way and honing that. And also like being aspirational. Like if I could do anything, what would I do?
mm-hmm.
And, Greg Larkin on one of your podcasts that I'd listened to was like, anybody can make that shift. It just depends on if you do it recklessly or not recklessly. I loved the way he phrased it.
I like that too. Yeah.
And so I think it's, looking past being aspirational and kind of being intentional about using all of that together.
Okay. That sounds hard. How do you do it?
How do you do it? That's a great question. Um, it's it's not just sitting down once, I think, and setting intentions. It's creating space for yourself to really self-awareness is a big part of this, right?
Yeah.
That is another thing where you can be like, well, how do you how do you do that? So
You know my interview style. How do you do that? Right.
yeah, so my best answer for that is everybody's a little different, but I found that I never was taking the time to really listen to that. Before I left the corporate world, I just was trying to work my way up the ladder and I enjoyed it. I did while I was there. But once I took a step back, it was kind of like, oh, is this really what I want to do or is it
Mm,
not what I want to do? And it's creating
mhm,
space each day to meditate or journal or listen to a podcast or read or whatever kind of gets your juices going towards that self-awareness. I've hired coaches. I would 100% recommend coaches to anybody
mm.
because that helps hugely with self-awareness for what you can't see. But yeah, there's tons of ways to get at it.
It is. I completely resonate with that insight. It's very hard to see from inside the bottle, and to read the label from inside the bottle, right? So that reflection. I mean, you can do it, but like you said, it takes a lot of reading and meditating to get to that self-awareness. And it's almost like a cheat. to hire a coach, right? And they're like, "Oh, listen, this." And they see you, right? And they can see what you're about. And I'm assuming that's kind of where you come in. You're a reflection. You're able to ask some good questions about what this person cares about, and then you use your kind of your storytelling brain to go, what about this? Is this kind of the thing that we're talking about? Is that, am I getting that correct? I mean, you and I have never, this is our first time meeting. We've never worked
Yes.
together. That's why I'm asking, like, what, how do you go about it?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. I've recently added, thought leadership consulting to my repertoire too, because it's basically one and the same
One
of
in the,
ghostwriting.
exactly.
It because
It's the same thing.
exactly you're helping people see what their message is and I kind of consider myself like the hype woman, right? Like it's that same thing of you can't see the label from inside the bottle. So many people have such great stories and such great insights and genius but they don't see that in themselves either. Like there's the self-awareness of like there's things that I need to improve in, but there's also the self-awareness of like, yeah, I'm a badass at these things and like
Uh-huh.
I
Uh-huh.
can make something of it. Like I can make a career of it. I can monetize it. I can share it. Not only can I share it, I should share my knowledge, my story with the world because it's going to be truly impactful. And once people kind of get that grain of hope of like, oh, there is something here. And like, if you can put it on paper for them, like I do a road mapping session, like you have a story to tell. Like, here it is. Once people see that, it's a whole
Hmm.
different ball game because
Yeah.
they can see that label then.
Yeah. Okay. Uh, bonus round. We're gonna dial up the difficulty here.
Let's do it.
Can if you do it well enough, can AI do your job?
My job.
Yeah.
That's a loaded question. I think, but you were dialing up the difficulty. I think AI is a fantastic tool. I think it's best suited for things like ideation. I think where it falls short is challenging you in different ways. Oftentimes it'll tell you what you want to hear, but I think challenging you and is the first step, right? Of
Yeah.
like, hey,
Yeah.
that's great, but I don't know if that's really going to best serve your audience or this or that. And
Yeah.
that's step one too. It step two is I've been pretty candid about being like, yeah, I feel pretty confident in my job security. Only because um, the amount of time that someone would have to take, like AI, you get out of it what you put into it, right? So by the time you take
That's
all of the
exactly right.
time to put in
Yep.
all of the prompts and the information and the stories and the voice you want to use and the editing, like you might as well have just taken as much time to write it yourself. And so there's no difference. Plus AI is gonna you know, it's going to use some catchphrasey tones like joyful or inspirational or whatever, but
Yeah.
I'm going to listen to exact word choices that you use and the cadence and things like that. And your
Hmm.
literary voice is different than your speaking voice. And so I think it's more nuanced than that. And for a book, that's a huge undertaking. Like
Yeah.
it's a cathartic process,
I
and I think
can't even
people
get it to
appreciate
do
that.
a good full article yet, you know.
Yeah.
So I think that's right. What about, let's stick to AI for a second. Could, and I hadn't thought about this before, so just go with me. Could you use AI to do that reflecting, that that self-awareness thing? Like, is it, do you think it's possible? I guess with enough context and input, like, I guess you could go down that road, but it's like, I think my question is more like capability, like, is it actually, do we think, and this is more AI philosophy, that AI has the capacity to reflect, do a somewhat decent job reflecting, getting you to, or getting one to, oh, this strength, or oh, this challenge, this is a gap that you need to fill.
Yeah, I think the answer is yes and no. Um, my chat GPT at times has come back with like I hate writing about myself. I love writing. I hate writing about myself. And it's given me like explanations of myself sometimes where I'm like, oh yeah, like that's pretty cool. Like I've never thought of it that way. And I know other people that have used it the same way. I also know people that train it to be more critical of like, hey, don't just agree with me all the time. And so I think you can
Yeah.
train it certain ways, but then it comes down to that issue that we keep talking about is that self-awareness of like it only knows about you what the information that you give it about you, right? So like it's not probably going to randomly just tell me that I should go start like I don't know, like a landscaping business or something because that's like nowhere in any of our past conversations.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think humans can ask different, better questions that might eventually get you to that, I think.
I think it's the inferences that it
Mhm.
can't quite do yet, even though they use that term. They're like, we can, my model infers. But I think you're talking about, and if I were in your shoes, it would be like I'm making big inferences leaps to get to landscaping or whatever it might be, right? Like that's the power of the human brain. And I think that's really interesting. So just because the output is words and that's what your output is, the doesn't mean that it's gonna replace you, which is not really my question. Like obviously that's not really my question. It's just like what role does it play in your world and how do you think about it? Um, all right, so last little chapter here in the episode. What advice would you give to someone who is coming up on their leadership journey and want to start defining for themselves their own voice, their own thought leadership? Like where would you advise them to start? How?
Yeah. I would tell them, I would first start with that intention setting, right? Of what impact do I want to make? So in the leadership journey, it comes down to that, right? Is what impact do I want to make?
Okay.
What impact do I want to make? And that's multifaceted, right? So you can look at different pillars of that. What impact do I want to make, like tangibly, that people can see in the world?
Okay.
What impact do I want to make on my team? What impact do I want to make on my organization as a whole, right? And so by starting there, you can kind of start to chart your course because you're being intentional about it. And then you kind of have a frame of reference of at least where you want to go, right? And then it's who do I want to step into being
Mm-hmm.
based on that?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where your authentic voice comes into play because we show up one place where we show up other places. And so people are going to spot if you're fake, people are going to spot if you're authentic, and showing up as that authentic leader who's clear about what they want to do, who they want to impact is powerful. People can feel that, and that's going to help impact your organization, your team, and what you can do.
It really is. I mean, as I'm listening to you, it really is a gift for those who are in roles of leadership or management inside of an organization. One is directly impacting those people's lives. So you can think about like, how do I want to help these people and how do I want to change their lives for the better? Not just how do we, crank out more widgets. And I think that is a perspective that more leaders should take, and it's really a gift. And your point about how do you do that authentically? How do you find the way that you're doing it? How can you position yourself as, for the greatest kind of impact in the world that you want to make?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think people, I mean, from my experience too, from both sides of it, as a manager, like you said, the things that I'm most proud of from that time were the mentoring aspect of it and the teaching aspect of it and seeing where people could go. And I also think that yes, an organization creates a culture, but I think you are most influenced by your direct manager's
Yeah,
approach to
of
that
course.
and
Yeah.
approach to management. And so it's really powerful when you decide how you want to show up as a leader, not just kind of going where the wind takes you of the organization, but saying, this is what I stand for, this is how I'm going to lead, and this is how I'm going to make an impact
Hmm.
is huge. And that impacts, work generations to come because other people see that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Really, really interesting. Jamie Dykstra, nonfiction book ghostwriter for business leadership and personal development. You can learn more about her at jamiedykstra.com. Last name Dykstra.com. Hey, Jamie, thanks for coming on Great Mondays Radio. Really, really fun and interesting exploration of authentic voice and genuine storytelling. Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much, Josh. I enjoyed it.